Love and light, brothers and sisters. So what I'm going to talk about now, originally I was meant to discuss this with someone else, my brother Benji, who I know from Facebook and commenting from videos, and I felt, and he has felt, that we are very in resonance with each other, perhaps soul family. So he commented on my vaccination video recently, saying that he agreed with many of the points I had made in the larger structure of what I was saying about it being an immune system response of Gaia, or that viruses in general are an immune system response of Gaia, and then talking about, you know, the effect of the jab that I have seen being an anti-spiritual effect, but he has had the experience of seeing the opposite, which is not something you hear. You know, I haven't actually heard anyone else say that so far, and I'm certain he's telling the truth. He's being authentic. So it has been his experience that 3 people he has known, 3 women, took the jab and not only made huge spiritual progress, but in a way that he hasn't seen commonly with other women, were able to fully integrate their divine masculine aspects, which I agree that this is about as rare as man integrating their divine feminine, you know. So I mean, we see more women empowered in the divine feminine than those empowered in both in balance, you know. So this is a big claim, and saying that they were able to actually have a whole heart awakening, come to unconditional love, come to their Christ self, to their Christ consciousness. That's a big claim. So again, I feel, knowing that he's telling the truth, well, how do I reconcile this? First of all, one of the things I noticed about myself and him and the whole conversation that I love is that me and him can hold positions of opposition as far as experience or concept, and yet still stand in harmony as brothers and allow the experience of the other to grow our understandings, to be resonant with each other, instead of in opposition, instead of fighting about it, instead of letting it divide us in any way. You know, I respect his viewpoint, I respect his experience. So the first way that if I had to explain this, and maybe I can't explain it, you know, because there is certainly much that is unexplainable to all of us if we're being honest and authentic. So, but if I had to explain it according to my understanding, knowing that it's true, I would say that these were probably starseeds or walk-ins, who either the vaccination was switched out with something positive by fellow light workers, which we have heard is happening and does resonate as true to me, or the actual assuming that the taking of the assuming that the taking of the jab is in some way a further increase or stimulus to the unbalance of the divine masculine within one. It is possible that the injection of this brought them to a stress point, a trigger point, that allowed the possibility of either corruption or ascension. And it is possible that they were able to cross these distortions and attacks and integrate them into full unity. And in that way they served them. So, as I've said before, there is nothing in existence that does not serve the Creator's will. It would not be here. It would not be here because in truth, there is no opposition to the Creator's will. So this whole conversation was interesting, but in the course of the conversation, Benji asked me something, whether I was part of the Emerald family of soul groups like him, of angelic groups like him, or whether I was from the Blue family. And I wasn't certain exactly what he was saying. I mean, I've heard these kind of things, but within 10 minutes of him saying this, coincidentally, I came across a video and a person talking about this exact thing. So then I went back and asked them, is this what you're referring to? Is this where you got this terminology? And in fact it is. So I started looking at the material that influenced him, something I'd not seen before, but I've been feeling its influence in the Starseed movement. This and some other things like it. And I see some really good stuff and some perhaps detrimental stuff here too. And also some distortion and fraudulent stuff going on. And what this was all referring to is a work called the CDT tablets, or and some people seem to attribute it also to the Guardian Alliance, but in other places the Guardian Alliance is associated with Lisa Renee's work, and they are not exactly harmonious to each other. In some ways they parallel, but in more ways Lisa Renee she's much more in resonance with the Starseed and Ascension movement as a whole. Ashayana Deane's work is incredibly interesting, incredibly diverse, very eclectic, and in certain ways it's at odds with almost the entire Starseed and Ascension community, okay? It doesn't have to be viewed that way. So in listening to this work, the first thing I gotta say is that a lot of it does really resonate. She is brilliant. She's bringing forth a lot of truth. So of course I checked into her a little bit and the movement she's with a little bit, looked at the criticisms of the movement. Criticisms are fairly typical of any movement you would find like this. Pretty much any Starseed movement has some disgruntled people around, has people critical of it, and people that don't understand it or believe it. That's true of it all. So a couple people gossiping, about things on Reddit would not make me discredit her work. Okay, I take it into consideration, but one thing I've noticed is when we discuss when the public, when the egos try to look at a spiritual movement or a channeler to ascertain the validity of what they're saying, invariably, more than or in conjunction with the logical arguments about the work itself, more what we look at is the character of the person according to their standards and lenses, and what they've heard generally through hearsay, almost always, because it's not usually the people that are actually involved speaking. So, and there was some stuff on there about her estranged daughter, not agreeing or understanding with her, and I didn't really see anything traumatic in there. I mean, this would be fairly common for any Starseed, that their family is not going to understand. There's going to be elements of their family that don't understand or agree with what's happening, that think they're crazy. And not only that, we all know that have been through awakenings, we all understand how traumatic and chaotic and upending and confusing it can be for us, as well, and all those around us. So if you're gonna look into almost any awakening being and look into their personal life, you're gonna find some stuff that doesn't seem harmonious with an enlightened being or something. Especially if you're looking into the past, because all of us at some point were third density. So all of us at some point were filled with distortions and confusions and programming, just like everyone else. And they don't seem to take this into consideration, because often the critiques are from 20 years before the person's awakening or something, or 10 years before. It's not necessarily in any way valid to what they say, because I used to be an incredibly inauthentic, deceitful person. I'm not anymore. Does that mean that I cannot become honest? Does that mean that I cannot learn the value of truth and authenticity in my own life and others? Of course not. Only those that believe they cannot change believe others cannot change. So, as I say, overall, I don't see anything there that really stuck as valid enough to make me question her work. And the technical arguments also could be applied to pretty much every other body of work. So again, I don't see anything too inharmonious there. The conflicts I find with it, the things, because I would suggest to at least study this, because if we're at the point where we just reject things out of hand without even looking at them and at least feeling into them openly, then we're not as clear as we think. You know? So, at least that's my opinion. But, so if we look at her work and feel into it honestly, like I said, a lot of it resonates, but one of the things I noticed that didn't resonate is that she's kind of saying, like, no one else has the real story. In some places, in some areas, she's like, look, this is only part of the story and I don't have it all. But in other places, she's literally pointing at other Starseed movements and saying, you've got it wrong, you've got it wrong. She made statements against the Pleiadians and Simjas in particular, saying that, you know, they're not actually in 12D Christic alignment like they think, you know. And I don't like that game at all. And there's a lot of people playing it. Which is why I'm not trying to sit here and say that she's wrong. I'm not trying to do that with anyone, really. I'm trying to see the both sides of things, because I'm really getting this message drilled into me. Like, this is the most resonant message of our times, is that perspective is not truth. None of us have the whole picture. Whenever you think you know that someone else's experience is invalid, that someone else, because you haven't had their experience, you know. So as soon as you think you know these things is when you really start to box yourself up into false realities. Even if you've escaped from one matrix, but you think your viewpoint is right, while 10,000 other starseeds are wrong, 10,000 other light workers are wrong, you know, I would definitely examine this. So that's one thing, but that doesn't mean she's wrong. The fact that that she makes some divisive statements, and also the whole system that she's saying seems to imply that, at least from the 11th dimension down, that the darkness has more power than the light. Because whereas most of our understanding, and my understanding, has placed the whole battle of light and dark truly in the 5th dimension and down, most of it manifesting in the 4th dimension, but the roots of it start in the 5th dimension with the 5th density dark ones, okay? Above that, the roots of it would be the plan of the Logos and the Elohim and all these beings to institute duality. So in that sense, this whole thing could be a story instituted by the Elohim and all them, a creational story, if you will. Doesn't mean it didn't happen any more than this story here is happening or not happening. Everything with form, every dream we have, no matter what world it appears to be in, is in a sense a story and a dream and an illusion, because the truth of us is formless, boundless, expansive, and infinite. So so she's placing the fall, the whole battle of light and dark starting at the 11th density, at the 11th dimension, at the 11th density Stargate. Now I heard someone else make an argument against some of these statements by her, and like I say, all light workers, kind of, that, you know, these beings live in the Vega star system or in the Orion star system, because in truth, a lot of these systems don't actually exist next to each other the way we're seeing it, because we're seeing it from a particular angle, and, you know, it appears that this constellation exists. It only exists from our frame of reference. You know, they wouldn't orient that way. And there is some truth to that viewpoint, but they're going to present things, extraterrestrials are going to present things to us in ways that we can understand it. Not necessarily in the most accurate way to their understanding and existence, because that wouldn't work. We wouldn't be able to understand it. It wouldn't communicate. So you can't get so caught up in all the details every time, especially being that there are so many possible realities and alternate universes. It is thoroughly possible that one Pleiadian group could appear to someone and tell them, we are from this planet, and then the planet was destroyed at this point at this time, and then another Pleiadian group could come and tell something very different to another group of people. They actually can both be telling the truth, because they can be from different densities, dimensions, time streams, timelines. This is a very complex creation. So underlying it is unity, is something incredibly simple. So if we remember that all things are possible with infinity, and to stop negating other stories and instead trying to see value in things or not, like something either resonates with you or not, in checking the truth of the CDT's claims, and Ashayana Deane's work, I came across an account by a cult survivor, or someone who was a follower of hers for about 5 years. And it was very interesting, because the person started off saying they were almost indoctrinated into this one UFO cult, and then they got out of it, and then they found Ashayana Deane's work, and it transformed their life. Like, they were doing these meditations, and they were getting powerful results, and it helped their life. But then one day they checked in Google, and they saw that there were some people making claims that she had been fraudulent in the past, or deceived them, or something like that. And at that moment, the logical mind kicked in, and they realized that they had been deceived. And then they went back and re-examined their past 5 years with her and her work, and then realized that everything they had been perceiving as an expansive experience, or powerful spiritual experience, or meditative experience, or something they had learned about themselves, they realized it was truly demonic, and now it terrified them, and they became paranoid and all this. And now they've taken it away, and they've gone back to the church, and they now are, I'm sure, living in a box of limitation again, where they're comfortable. So unfortunately, this does not seem like a revelation to me, but an ego one falling back into egoic existence and belief systems, because the truth is, whatever you read, it either works for you or it doesn't. It either makes your vibration raise or lower. It either makes you expand or contract. Truthfully, what does it matter about the specific validity reference to your timeline, since all things are possible, about data and information and how things went? Because everything went from every way, kind of. If 1 million people watched an event happen, then we have 1 million perspective views. And some of them are going to be radically in opposition, but guess what? They're all right. They're all real. They all exist. And all of them together make the truth. So, in summation, I would recommend that you at least check into her work. But definitely use your own discernment. Check everything through your heart and something feels like it's not feeling good, or it doesn't feel true, then step back. Step back. Maybe you can look at it again at another time. Sometimes things will not be resonant at some point, and then later they will be very resonant because it's not the right time for you. It's not even about the validity of the information. It's that you're not ready for the information. This has happened to me multiple times. Anytime I ever make any kind of critical statement, or a statement that sounds like I'm judging another, know that I only understand this thing through my own experience of this entrapment. You know, it's the way I've been tripped up, and so I share this in the hopes that someone else can see through this, or that it can stop someone else from falling on their face. Make things a bit easier for the collective, because if we're not doing things that are helpful for the collective, then we're doing something wrong, or not. If you are in harmony with ascension and the service to others, the service to all understanding, if you're in harmony with the law of one, then this in fact is the truth for you. Before I close, I would like to mention one other thing. I'm not going to mention any names here, but there are certain amongst us, there's a whole kind of phenomenon coming out. It seems to be related to Ashayana Deane's work in some kind of way. Before I get to this, let me go back to something else about Ashayana Deane's work that's not resonant and that I'm definitely not sure about. I would be very weary of embracing, but again, I can't say it's wrong. And that is that she's claiming that the flower of life, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden spiral, that these only exist in the matrix, that these are fallen sequences, that the Metatronic code, that Metatron in fact is a fallen entity. If you listen to her work, you will hear that she will say Metatron is a fallen entity who has set up this whole system, basically, this whole fallen matrix. Well, I've called on Metatron a couple times, kind of experimentally, called on him in one of my videos the other day, but I don't actually have much experience or feeling with Metatron. I've definitely felt Michael, and she speaks against Michael in some ways, or at least of what I felt was Michael, you know, and it felt beautiful, sacred, powerful to me, loving, clear, intelligent. But I don't have any experience with Metatron as far as the perception back. I haven't worked alone with Metatron to feel those things yet. But I do know that with Yahweh and the whole Metatron kind of archetype that's in the Bible, I definitely feel a distortion there. I definitely feel that there's some negative extraterrestrial influence there, that the whole father archetype as the judgmental being, this doesn't resonate with me at all. And so I've always kind of felt this. I've always felt that. So it wouldn't surprise me. I'm perfectly willing to accept this possibility. I'm going to meditate on it more. We're going to feel into it and find out the truth of it for us. But related to that, there are others who are. Before I go on, but in saying that the geometry of the flower of life and all this is wrong, and that it should be based on a 12D architecture, she puts forth a whole new sequence different than the 369 Fibonacci spiral. So keep in mind, she's saying that Tesla is way off that and saying that the 369 are important and all this. She's saying Tesla's wrong, and also she's basically saying that the natural order we see around us is just the matrix, and it turns out that the code she puts forward as the true organic code is binary code. That seems a bit suspicious to me, to tell me that the Fibonacci code and the golden spiral are inorganic and the actual code is binary code. But then again, I can see some validity to this, because when I look out at the world here and I see the cruelty in nature, I know this isn't the true world, this isn't the true kingdom. And when I have experienced animals in a higher vibrational state, I was quite aware that they didn't have that darkness within them anymore. They weren't carnivores anymore. They were highly intelligent and loving and completely different. Yes, they carry that love with them here always, but there's also a violence and a corruption in nature here. So, I know I'm in a matrix, so how can I say for sure? And being that the one divided into two, the two became the three, to say that the binary code is at the heart of creation doesn't seem so crazy either. She also says that the yin yang is a fallen symbol. I find that to be a little inauthentic, but again, maybe it's just a lens, and she could be seeing something very true through a distorted lens, which would change things quite a bit. So, check on it, read it, listen to it, and see what you think. But in conjunction with that, what I was saying is there's kind of this 12D Christos architecture emerging in the collective, okay? It sounds very good. It sounds very good. But in looking at the people saying these things, and I'm not saying anyone involved is or isn't fraudulent, but it appears to me that there are those in this movement that are saying these things that are just in it for the money. There's a lot of money exchanging hands, and I'm not sure why money has to be involved. If you and I are equal brothers and sisters in the light, and we go to serve our Creator and serve our brothers and sisters together, can't that be voluntary? Like, why does one person have to get money from everyone else? And it seems like these rings are set up this way, okay? And they're growing pretty fast. They kind of also say, they have this label, they talk about organic and inorganic. And I know there's organic and inorganic systems, but they're very quick to label other humans as inorganic. This I find pretty detrimental and dangerous. If you think your judgment is so perfect that you can't be misled into falsely judging your brothers and sisters. And in fact, haven't we been told enough by the Christ to not judge? To not judge. So I can't judge. I'm only saying what I'm seeing. I look at some of these people and I feel them, and some of them are very powerful lights. I feel love. They're definitely not like fraudulent. Everyone involved in this stuff is definitely not fraudulent. I'm saying there are some involved. In addition, the rest, the ones that have good intentions and are validly ascending just like everyone else, that doesn't mean they're not confused. That doesn't mean they're not distorted. That doesn't mean that they're being misled to spread dissension amongst the groups. And I see this happening with many of the Starseed communities, many of them, especially if they're engaged in battling each other. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all brothers and sisters. We can all be confused. In fact, we are all confused. I don't think there's any of us here, not anyone listening to my videos, and not anyone speaking in this format on their own video, that is free of any confusions. So let's not pretend that any of us are the walking Christ or the Buddha. We are all powerful. We are all divine. We can do amazing things. We can do miraculous things. This does not mean that you're unique in that. If you have a unique mission, we all have a unique mission, but the mission is a mission of service. It should not be to glorify the ego or the power of the individual, or to in any way separate that individual from his brothers and sisters and place one above, as if their gnosis is more powerful than anyone else's. That being said, there is some amount of, also on the other side, there is some amount of, because we come apparently from different soul families, different backgrounds, different heritage, different starseed families, And because we have different missions, even though we have a joint mission, we also have different individual and group missions. And they require many different understandings. So sometimes it may be that this group over here is doing something which is making them disharmonious to this group over here. And although that on one level is not great, it might be necessary for the time being. Everything serves a divine purpose. So I hope this was informative and interesting. When Benji feels better, I will bring him on. He's beautiful. He's powerful. He's a very loving being, but he's going through a lot, just like all of us right now. So, love and light to all. And also, I meant to say, all those and these emergent starseed movements, because people are coming into their powers and hearing things and integrating all of these other people's ideas and experiences into their consciousness. There's a good bit of just repeating things and calling on ascended masters or things where people truly don't have the connection on the etheric or emotional or causal levels, so it's mainly a physical prayer, although there's always some effect to these things, and for the most part they don't realize that there are complete other levels of communication with these beings until you're communicating with them like you and I. Love and light.